Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Grady. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Inland and Wetlands Commission of Monroe. It is March the 28th, 2018, and it is currently 7:04. The first order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to introduce the members of the board present and accounted for tonight. Starting over there on my right is Commissioner Clark Gingras. Next to him is Ross Mastroraco. Next is our treasurer, Jim Stewart, who is a professional engineer and a licensed land surveyor. My name is Jason Grady. I am your humble chairman. To my left is Vice Chairman Commissioner Jeff Shamus, who is a certified ecologist, professional wetland scientist, and a certified soil scientist. Next is our Secretary, Lois Spence. On her left is Donna Szrzinski, who is our Inland and Wetlands Commission and Land Use Coordinator. Next to her is Scott Schatzeline, who is a licensed professional engineer, land use director, town engineer, and our inland wetland agent. And of course, Rebecca Wood, our recording secretary, is holding down the fort tonight. Before we start, I am required to read you our mission statement and how the meeting will proceed. The objective and purpose of the Inland and Wetlands Commission is to provide for the overall protection and preservation of the inland, wetlands, and watercourses within the town of Monroe. In the normal course of our meetings, we will hear public hearings and other applications. The protocol for public hearings is to have an applicant make a representation or presentation to the commission, during which and after which the commission will be asking the applicant questions. The commission will review town, staff, and other independent comments. The meeting will then be opened up for public comment. I will ask that all comments be made to the chair of the commission, and any and all comments pro, in opposition to, or of a general nature are made. The applicant will be given the opportunity to respond. It is not necessary that the applicant respond, but generally in their best interest to do so. There will be no further opportunity for new questions unless new material is entered in as evidence, or testimony is entered in as evidence or testimony during the response. Please keep any and all comments, pro and con, specific to inland wetlands related matters. Other applications that do not involve a public hearing will follow a similar format, with the exception that there will be no public comments allowed. The meeting follows our published agenda unless otherwise amended. The agenda is up on the front table in green if anybody would like a copy. Is there any changes to the agenda tonight?
Yes. I need to add under section 12, the IWV 2017-04. It's for 139 Hattertown Road. Mr. Krisak is the owner of that property, and it's under general discussion or other. And it's just in regards to a small modification to his already approved plan.
Okay, that's it.
There's one more. Introduction of
Yes,
one
I'm getting there now. So we have another call to order, item C. I will turn that over to our town engineer and inland wetlands agent, Scott Schatzeline.
Yes, I wanted to introduce the new inland wetland inspector. We filled the position, and she's here tonight. It's,
Denise, if you want to come on up and just say hi to everybody from the
Denise Halstead.
Please keep your comments to 10 minutes only.
I know you have an acceptance speech.
Denise is well qualified. She's a licensed engineer, so.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very well qualified.
Thank you.
Denise, we are super happy to have you. Thanks so much.
Keep Scott in line.
That's right.
No, Denise has been getting her feet wet and going through David and Gabe's and her predecessors' paperwork.
Oh, my gosh.
And
It's a
she's
large
actually
pile.
And she's smiling.
done a really good job, you know, she's
Same
going
happy
through.
pill that Donna has today.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
happy pills are good.
We just
thing.
keep them on the counter.
And this is her second week, so she did come back.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is
Yes.
good, this is good.
So,
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we are at full steam, love that. Okay, I will move on to our minutes of the March 14th, 2018 meeting. I will entertain a motion regarding these minutes.
Make a motion to approve.
As presented.
I don't know, is there any comments?
I will second that.
I have a motion made by Commissioner Shamus to accept the minutes of the March 14th, 2018 meeting. It's seconded by Commissioner Spence. Any changes or comments regarding these minutes?
Nope.
Wow.
I know,
Wow.
2 weeks in a row.
Okay,
Good job.
all those in favor of adopting these minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Jasmine.
I watched the video.
You watched the video, so the record will show that Commissioner Massaraco watched the video, even though he was not present.
The video of this or the YouTube video?
you're funny.
Motion passes unanimously, thank
So
you.
no changes?
No changes at
Yay,
all.
well done.
Wow.
As she keeps it, keeps it.
Okay, now is the portion of our agenda reserved for general public participation. This is a period of time reserved for comments of a general nature. Anybody in the audience is free to make, as it relates to inland wetlands matters in the town of Monroe. Anybody? No, moving right along. Subdivision reports, recommendations to the Planning and Zoning Commission, there are none. Moving right along to regulated activities, there are no regular meetings scheduled for today, so moving right along to our first public hearing is 94 Elm Street. Baghdadi owner, Olson representative, Wolf engineer, proposed single-family home with associated site improvements. This is continued from our last meeting on March the 14th.
Yes. Yes.
As of tonight.
Oh, right.
Okay. Just checking. Three files.
No, you should have 94, you should have the last comments from Scott.
Good evening, Ron Wolf, professional engineer, representing the applicant, Peter Olson.
If you want to leave that, it should pick it up, so you don't have
Okay,
to hold it.
sure.
Believe it or not, just as long as you talk toward it, you know,
Okay.
wherever you're standing, it might be easier that way.
So we have submitted revised plans and a letter dated March 20th, 2018, to Mr. Scott Schatzline in response to the review comments on his memo regarding the project here at 94 Elm Street. We also submitted a report from Eric Davison providing some additional information on the invasive species and made to the site, as well as some several alternatives or that he discussed in his memo regarding the invasive species. So we changes we made to the plans and the additional information we provided included updating the, or bringing the survey up to date so that it was T2 certified, putting the contours on a NAVD 88 datum. We added the limit of the floodplain to the site plan, which was based on the field topography. Property owners to the north have been added to the plan, and a note has been added to the plan indicating that the wetland flagging was located as part of the survey. Let's see. We provided a response on the owner's request to maintain the current location of the existing gazebo, utility building, and deck overhanging the westerly pond. Those are all shown on the site plan. The gazebo and the little utility building are in this location here. And this is the existing deck that's overhanging the pond. If you want to call it the finished floor of that deck, is above the floodplain elevation, which is approximately elevation, I think it's 409 is this line right here, which is the floodplain elevation. There was a question as to whether there was still electricity in the existing structures, and the applicant has informed me that the electricity has been disconnected from the existing structures shown on the plan. And we added a proposed limit of the yard area, which is shown here in green. And essentially, it's to the limit of the clearing, which extends down to the existing chain link fence that you see here. And there was also some discussion about what we are proposing to do with the fence. So we delineated the area of proposed fence removal, which is chain link fence. So we're proposing to keep the portion of chain link fence that kind of runs down the side of the property, and eliminate the portion of the fence that runs in a north-south direction here. We're proposing 3 wetland markers, one at the north limit of clearing, one in the middle, and then one at the south corner of the limit of clearing, all on the east side. They're about 50 feet, or 40 to 50 feet apart. We performed an additional test pit as requested in the memo in the location of the underground stormwater infiltration system. We added the test results to the plan, and we also, due to the zoning regulation change, we were able to relocate this underground stormwater infiltration chamber proposed for the driveway runoff to the west. So that activity has been pulled out of the regulated area due to the change in the zoning regulations, which allows those structures to be located outside of the building setback line. We provided a bond recommendation, and that was reviewed and marked up by Mr. Schatzline. And I have the response, or the letter from Eric Davison. I don't know how much detail you want me to get into that, but we can certainly discuss it. So Eric also delineated the floodplain soils, which was kind of difficult for him to do, but he did it by soil borings, but he found the floodplain soils to be located more to the east, near the actual boundary of the river. But there was a lot of disturbance there, obviously, from the ponds. Let's see, he discusses the vegetation along the ponds, the different species. Invasive plants, I think that was the item that was of concern to the commission. Invasive plants are not widespread on the site. The largest concentration totals approximately 1,500 square feet and is located along the northeast corner of the easterly pond near the Far Mill River. See attached sketch. This area includes multiflora rose, Japanese knotweed, Japanese barberry, Asiatic bittersweet, and bush honeysuckle. A few scattered invasive plants, including multiflora rose, bush honeysuckle, and autumn olive, occur around the margins of the pond, about less than 12 total shrubs. And these thoughts are, given the limited distribution across the site, control of invasive is not likely to have a significant benefit to wetland function or upland wildlife habitat. Should control be desired, flush cutting of invasive shrubs along with stump application of glyphosate would be an effective method of treatment. Multiple treatments may be necessary. So we kind of wanted to have a discussion with the commission about that, and that was also noted as for discussion during the hearing on the updated memorandum from Mr. Schatzline. Regarding the wetland impacts, Eric writes, the project proposes construction of a single-family residence with on-site sewage disposal system. Runoff from the home's roof area will be infiltrated back into the ground. A significant separation distance, i.e. wetland buffer of 90 feet, is proposed between the westernmost pond and the limits of disturbance. Such a separation distance will allow sheet flow to naturally infiltrate into the ground. Therefore, there will be no direct discharge of runoff, which might carry residential pollutants such as lawn fertilizers and pesticides to wetlands. Furthermore, because this is a single residence, pollutant loads can be expected to be low. Supplemental plantings in the wetland buffer can often be a meaningful measure to improve the quality of surface runoff from development. However, because the proposed wetland buffer contains a dense spruce tree canopy, establishment of supplemental plantings would be difficult due to the deep shade. Additional plantings along the western shore of the western pond might have a minor wildlife benefit, but I do not think such plantings would be necessary to improve filtration of pollutants from runoff. In summary, it is my professional opinion that the project as proposed will not have an adverse impact on wetlands or watercourses. If you have any questions regarding my findings, please feel free to contact me. That's Eric Davis. And he just has attached a sketch showing approximate locations of the invasive species with some notes. And that is all the updated information I have. I can answer any questions at this time.
Couple questions.
Sure.
So I noticed on the new plan, you put apparently soil types
Yes.
with the numbers,
Yes.
but there's no legend, there's no indication of what those are.
Okay.
At least I couldn't find them anywhere. I saw the
Okay.
soil boundary line, but there's no, I went through both this report and his delineation report, and there's no numbers associated with the soils.
He did, Eric did provide an email for me, so I believe the 38C is the Hinckley type soils. The 308 Aquavents is the pond, so that's the AQ.
They actually
And
don't use AQ anymore, but it's a number, it's a Eudorphins wet that they use. But I guess just the critique is that in order, for the rest of the commission to understand what these are and what description it is, having it on a legend and indicating what we're looking at, because we can't go back to any of the reports to understand what is that.
okay,
I understand what it is, but
okay,
just a critique that we can't, go back anywhere in any information to understand what that is. And in his report, he mentions floodplain soils, but he doesn't specifically talk about what soil it is. Is he just indicating that it's the Sacco soil, or is he indicating that there's something else? It's just a little general. Talks about alluvial soils, talks about floodplain soils, and if he's indicating that they're the same, it'd be good to have kind of one consistent term used.
okay.
In terms of the invasives, one other thing that I think we talked about last time was tree line and existing and proposed.
Okay,
I know that the site's pretty forested right
Yes.
now.
yes.
It's a matter of what are you proposing? Where is that new tree line going to end?
I've shown that. I thought I've showed that pretty clearly, that this green area is our area of disturbance. That's going to be the proposed lawn.
Okay.
And the remaining is going to stay. The remaining vegetation everywhere outside of this clearing area is proposed to remain. And it's pretty heavily wooded.
If I can get some clarification too, because this was a little confusing for me as well. When I went out there, this area in the back here, this whole area here, is an area that was previously, to my understanding, was cleared, and this is kind of, looked like an outing type place, where there was a gazebo, an outdoor kitchen, and a three-sided shelter, and a deck. And there's larger trees, and it looks like it was cleared a little bit better and maintained. So when I look at this, I see, a yard here that goes with the house, the lawn, and I understand the lawn, okay, the desire is to have the lawn go to here, which is good. But my question was exactly, what do they intend to do here? Is it, because usually in locating these markers, Ron,
Mhm.
typically what the commission does is they put these markers at the limit of future maintenance and disturbance. In other words,
Sure.
whatever area these people are gonna use for their yard, whether it be, wood chips or green grass, now's the time to set those appropriately, because it would allow, I'm assuming they're gonna wanna go back there and use
Yeah.
part of that to get to the deck and all that.
They do. The applicant has told me that they would like access to the pond. That's why we're proposing to remove the fence. They would like to leave this area as is. It's kind of covered with pretty thick layer of pine leaves, needles, and cones, and that's how it's proposed to remain at this time.
Does that line of Norway spruce, is that what they are? Is that in front of the fence and
The
proposed to be
spruces-
removed, or is
They're
that,
on the backside of the fence.
they're on the back side of the
Right,
fence?
we're gonna leave all of it.
Okay, okay. It's been our experience at times that if you don't give a large enough yard to start with, the new people that move in want a bigger yard, so they flatten everything without, they end up creating a violation because they're not aware of the fact that they need, whatever it is, our approval to do work in the upland review. Would it behoove you to make a little bit bigger yard so that they wouldn't feel the need to expand what they have?
He's very,
You can use just name and address for me, please, sir.
my name is Peter Olson, I'm the applicant. My address is 19 Hunters Ridge, Woodbridge. It's a gentleman that the yard is sufficient for him, and he basically just wanted to leave in back of the chain link fence with the pine needles and just have access to, walk down to the pond. He doesn't plan on,
Okay, so this is not a spec house or anything?
No,
You
it's-
have
it's-
somebody that's actually interested?
no, it's for a customer, and he just wants to have access onto the dock, to the gazebo. It's all heavily, pine needles, so there's really no growth going on there.
It's very shaded.
Yes, and I was one of the ones who walked it
As
yesterday.
we discussed.
The three-sided shed, the deck that goes along with that is in really bad shape. Is that going to be removed?
We could remove that. I guess there was like a canopy on top of it that was all rotted and fell down, that was there,
Okay.
but we'll
So is
take.
the shed itself being proposed to stay? Or is that?
Really, he'd like to keep the gazebo and.
No, the gazebo's beautiful. I have no
yeah.
problem with the
And-
gazebo
and
or with the deck.
Right, and then
my problem
the other
was
ones
the
are
shed.
really in bad shape, so,
So you're proposing to remove them?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he said he would keep but he didn't realize how
Okay.
bad shape it was. I mean, it's not in that good a shape at all.
Mm.
Originally thought it was in better shape, so we wanted to keep it, but it's really in disrepair.
Okay. And this is one of my favorite questions. In lieu of the Cultec, whatever they're called, thank you. My vocabulary escapes me whenever I need it. I was wondering, would a swale running along the sides of the property since you have the topography that it's not terribly steep, it might be a good way to disperse your your excess overflow from the roof? And it might be cheaper in the long run and less maintenance.
Well, I guess we'd have to have some pipe to get that a little bit away from the house. But, I mean, the soils are very well drained there. So I think whether you have a swale or those chambers, the water's gonna soak in instantly. I just think with the little yard area they have, I don't know if we wanted to have, I mean, we'd have to put that down a little bit further away from the proposed development, and then we'd be creating more disturbance, I think, closer to the pond. So,
Okay, I just.
my
I figured I'd
feeling
ask.
is that infiltration system is, either way, the water's gonna soak into the ground very quickly, in a very short distance. But, and they're basically gonna function the same, I think.
Okay, all right. And is the reserve system big enough? That looks like it's awfully small compared to the original proposed.
Yeah, that reserve system is just depicting a code complying, it's that would be like a higher efficiency leaching system product. And that's
Oh, I see.
that's only depicting a replacement system if the existing one were to fail.
Right.
But in reality,
Understood.
a lot of times when a system fails, the system's removed and another system's put basically in the same place or very close to it. So there's just not a lot of extra room on this lot.
I love the trees, they're gorgeous. Let me see.
Did we, I'm sorry, did I miss, are we happy with where the markers are in this? I know Scott had mentioned it. But if we're removing the fence, and now it's just the markers into the wooded pine, whatever, barren, whatever you want to call it, there. Is that the appropriate spot for those markers?
Should that be at the grade change? Do you think?
Stupid question. What do the markers say? Does it say wetland area or
This is
wetland?
regulated area, right?
Yeah, they're kind of ambiguous because they're kind of used for different things, and typically, they've been put in at the limit of within the upland review area, at the limit of what they're going to maintain. Now, in this case, I mean, it's your choice. They could either go there, or I was thinking they could go along, you know, on the other side of this thing, like, I don't know, about 10 feet away from the pond here, and then coming into, you know, maybe, in this fashion.
We're open to whatever the
Yeah,
commission
and then the
suggests,
approval
essentially.
could have a condition on it that kind of qualifies what this back area within the 100-foot upland review, in other words, what it should remain as unless they come in for an additional application. You know, that's what I was thinking, but you could do it either way. I just wanted them to know that now's the time to discuss that, you know?
We're open to suggestions on that. That was what our thoughts were, but if the commission thinks that's gonna be too limiting on the property owner or future property owners, obviously the property could change hands over through the,
Yeah, I
the
think
years,
they'd be
and maybe
smart to
that's-
keep it the way it is with the trees and the pine needles, and it makes a great filtration and buffer area between the lawn and the pond, you know? It's just that having lived through a bunch of these, you know, you see people move into the house and everything's a lawn.
Right. Was 10 feet enough?
Just,
Just.
Could be more.
Okay. And that grade change is what, 40 feet or so?
you know, you could put like, one marker could go here, you could put a marker here, and then one here, and then, you know, one there, and then like just a
Yeah.
V shape. And then everything beyond those markers, with the exception of the deck, would be left natural. And I don't know if you want them to consider any buffer plantings or anything like that, but might be difficult with the tree cover and the acidity and the pine needles, but, you know, maybe rhododendron or something like that would go there.
Yeah, because the edges of the pond are kind of
They got a little bit of growth
A little
along the
bit.
edge, yeah.
Except for the trees that are falling into.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine at some point, you know, if there's some dead trees or whatever, they should be allowed to remove those, obviously, just maybe have a limit on that. But I do have a little bit more of information on the soil types. Maybe I should have put that on the plan. I didn't know how much information to add, but, so Eric Davison just provided me that there was Saco-type soils along the river.
Is that the number 108?
That would be the number 108, yes.
Okay.
And then the ponds were the aquants. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. AQ were the two ponds. Low slope east to the floodplain were eudorthants. I believe is that 308? So I used to see those as UD. So these numbers are kind of new to me, and I actually asked him for the letters. He told me they don't use the letters anymore, so they're using the numbers now. So, and then the Hinckley is the 38, and the C represents the slope, which is the slope on the land. If that helps at all.
As far as the markers go, I don't know, it's kind of, you know, they have their lawn area, but it's you know, it's like a pre-existing use area, and, you know, it almost makes sense maybe to do, you know, a 10-foot buffer off the edge of the pond, and just, you know, I mean,
That's what I was thinking.
I wouldn't even do that funnel, it's just do it off the edge of the pond. I think that just makes a little bit
Yeah.
more,
And you could request that they put a note on the approved plan that, and have it in a letter that, that area remain non-seeded. You know, that it remain in its unless they come in for future application. You know, you put that qualification
So
statement.
we could draw a straight line across 10 feet off the westerlymost edge of the pond, put two markers on each property line, the north and south, so you have, you know, straight demarcation. You know, say a straight line from there down to here,
That might simplify things.
and then, you know, beyond that point, and maybe one in the middle, or, you know, two, you know, quarter points.
I guess I don't understand if we don't want them, once they buy the house, to cut all the trees down, and then we put the markers 10 feet off the pond, I would think, oh, you know, I'm set to do anything I want until 10 feet
Well,
off
that's
the
what I'm
pond.
saying, have the qualification statement in the letter and the.
Yeah, but that's not gonna
They're not
hold
gonna
up.
remember that.
Right,
No,
yeah.
who would remember, you don't even remember the marker in front of you.
Well, wouldn't it be a good idea to recommend that they stay out of the flood zone? Because that to me would be the demarcating line. Because the flood zone is more of a sensitive area, you don't want future owners to,
I mean, flood zones, easily can be utilized for passive
oh yeah,
uses.
but I'm just talking for
You just
markers,
can't
because you
put
still can use it even with the markers there.
Yeah,
So-
you could
but
use
you
it, but
can't-
you just can't put structures there.
Right, well, at least it alerts people to the fact that there is something special about that line, and that perhaps, you know, with the conservation markers up there, it might say, okay, that's my drop dead line or something like that. You know? That was just a suggestion.
Just leave it as proposed at this point.
Yeah,
I suggest leaving it as proposed then.
I mean, that's where the limit is, that's where they're saying
'Cause then
that
they
they're
won't
at
disturb
the
any of
edge
those
of the
trees.
developed areas. If
Because
they
the
want
marker
to do
doesn't mean
more,
you
they
can't
come
walk-
back, we
Marker
bring them
doesn't mean
back.
you can't walk through the pine barren to get to the pond, it
Yeah.
just
Right.
means you can't cut the trees down.
Yeah, I'd rather leave
Yeah, it doesn't
leave
say you
as
can't use
proposed
the
then.
property, it just
You got a
says,
good point.
Yeah, that's a good
Okay.
point. I mean, in this
That's
case, it doesn't, you know, the markers could just go where they're showing them, and then,
Just leave it.
if they were to do anything notably within that area, they'd have to come in for an application.
Agreed.
I guess that's why we left the wording kind of general.
well, it is in the setback area, right?
yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yep.
Now,
Anything else from the commission?
Buffer
the only other question I
review
had was
area.
about the easement. Did we discover that it is or not an issue?
A deed restriction.
Yeah,
The
there
deed
were,
restriction?
well, what I did was I looked into it, and I mean, it clearly is, it is a infraction against the deed restriction. The way I kind of put it to bed, because it really, I don't know what to do with it. I really, it's so old, if you were to reverse it, what are you gonna do at this point? But what I did was I went through the state statute, and if you read it carefully, it says that they have to provide the notice for that to the holder of the conservation easement if the proposed activity is within the easement area. And it's not. Now, what we've done, and I think we should continue to do, is if there is a conservation easement on the property, we kind of go through the motions of that notice, and no one, I haven't gotten anybody that has had an issue with that. But in this case, that was kind of how I put it to bed, that when I read it real carefully, that technically it doesn't say that, so I was just disregarding it.
Okay, all right.
Similar to that is the floodplain issue and the fact that there's a deck there. When I went through the GIS program that we have, and went all the way back to 1984, there was evidence of that deck or some appendage out into the pond there. Within a year and a half of when the floodplain regulations were adopted from FEMA. So again, without having, real accurate information, I just let it be.
Okay.
The deck is, it is a very solid deck, I don't, and it is above the floodplain elevation, so.
I think that was probably a guess.
So what I did was, I put this in the, I put a note of it in the file, addressing both as to how you rationalize that, and it is labeled as exhibit number 11.
Okay, good. That's it, I have no more questions.
Anything else from the commission? Okay, so
You did?
I'm assuming we're gonna, I gotta do public comment, right? Seeing as though this is a public hearing, I will currently open up this hearing to public comment. So is there anybody here that wants to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Anybody want to speak in opposition to this application? Anybody wants to speak make a comment of a general nature on this application? Seeing none, I'm assuming we want to close the hearing, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll consider this hearing closed. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
When do we hear
Hey, Ron.
the verdict?
We will deliberate as soon as we're done with a few other things, and we'll get a letter out to you,
Okay.
right?
Well, you typically would be voting the following, remember?
2 weeks.
Just take a
That's right.
copy and forward to the desk.
2 weeks, right? Is that our next meeting?
Yeah. Is that a statute requirement?
Okay.
What?
Is that a statute requirement?
No, that's just
No,
how
it's
we do it.
typically how the commission does it, so that they have a draft
He composes the letter and we read it.
from a legal. You don't have to do that if it's a simple application, but we found that it's much more legally sound to do
cleaner.
that.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Thomas.
Holding on to me over there, Lois, making me sweat it out. Thought I smelled sugar in here.
Thinking this is good?
You're giving them out.
Lois.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then all the range.
Thank you, Lois.
Anytime.
Okay. Everybody ready to move on to the next item on our agenda? IWC 2018-01-R, 98 Enterprise Drive. Excuse me. Enterprise Drive LLC, Bartoli partner, Edwards engineer, site development to construct building and storage area and remediation of IWB 2017-02, continued from our last meeting on March the 14th.
Good evening. For the record, Larry Edwards, professional engineer, offices 27 Stepney Road in Easton. I basically have 10 items here that I picked up from the last public hearing that required responses. We provided revised plans to the town yesterday. And so I'm just going to go over those quickly. And Scott did send back a response letter to us yesterday or today with, I think there's 2 or 3 other items that you picked up that we didn't address, which I would hope that they can make as conditions of any decision they make. But I'm just going to go through the ones here. There was an issue of, we didn't show the, this is the comparison plan, and we had the before and after plantings locations in the same color, whereas they should have been red for the previous application. And the one of Scott's comments was, and this plan doesn't show it, but one of his comments was we didn't include this little bulk area, which was an existing previous application item that should have been red on this plan. So we do have one additional thing that we missed that was under Scott's comments. Now going to the site drawing.
You gotta get off the drawing, I think you gotta go over to some of the white area there. There you go.
There we go. Just trying to get it rotated one more time.
Just up beside that one.
Just going to go through the items. The first item that I have on my list, and these might not be in any specific order, there was a comment brought up about the size of the riprap outlet pad that we had. We revised that to, actually, as Scott had recommended, as a spreader lip. We were able to reduce the length of that considerably, and that is a detail of that is provided in the plan. The existing stone walls, there was this stone wall that goes around kind of along the edge of the wetlands, which we didn't show. We have included that on the plan. The plantings, it was requested that we look at staggering the plantings, and we have done that here. Basically what we did is we kept the evergreens, which are the, I believe in this case, spruces. They are a constant line, but we staggered the intermittent plantings so that we get the effect of a staggering, but the delineation will still be a straight line with the evergreens. A access ramp to the basin, we proposed that. We've shown that here, and it's graded. It's to a grade that we can get into the site and get into the basin. We specified the materials for the basin, and those lists of bulk material types. Basically, we're calling processed or native sands and stone material, topsoil or other similar organic materials, or processed wood mulch materials. So those are the three types of materials. I know there was specifically, they didn't want any asphalt milling products in there. So those are the type of materials that would be proposed to be used and stored in that area. We have included a particle separator in our stormwater drain, so that will be a last level of protection before it goes into the stormwater basin. The limits of disturbance, again, on that, I don't want to go back to that other plan because I'm probably getting in the wrong direction, but it does show the limits of disturbance from the, let's just see how it works. Okay, this turn, but we do have the limits of disturbance of the two. One is in red and one is in the darker color. So we did provide that on the drawing. The 4-bay outlet, we moved it all the way up to the top of the 4-bay berm so that we maximize the length of travel between the 4-bay and the initial inlet to where the outlet to the primary basin is. Soils report, we have provided an updated report. We were able to get our soil scientist out there this week. And on the pipe outlet, there was a from Scott's report of the levels of the pipe and the potential backwater flow disturbing the outlet to the basin. We have redesigned that, and we now have a 24-inch pipe instead of an 18-inch. We've lowered it down so that it's well below the outlet to the outlet controls, and it will require a 0 head, so one does not impact the other. So, but we do, in this plan, we changed it over here. I changed it to 24-inch outlet. This area right here, it still shows it in 18, so we do have to make that change. So that would be something for conditional approval. We did miss that. And now going to Scott's response to our latest submission, which is what we have on the board here tonight. There was 3 or 4 items that he had that one I indicated was the bulk storage from the comparison plan is the wrong color. And the other 2 were both, we did not provide a revised stormwater management plan or copies of that, but we did make the changes in the report, but we just did not provide a report. And that that was in response to this pipe outlet here and the emergency overflow, let me just get this right, structure. I think that's the same response is in this outlet structure. Here was the outlet invert of that pipe going out, which we lowered.
No, the emergency overflow was, it was just a discrepancy between the 2 plans in the, that's the
okay.
top where you have the.
Okay. I think I made that change, but I may not have. If I didn't, then I apologize because, we will make that change.
I think it was a matter where what you did was you eliminated the number from the plan and the numbers on the detail, and I just need to verify it when I get the report.
Okay. And that's the extent of what the changes that we made in response to your comments at the last meeting, and also those issues that we still have to, again, that will require changes in terms of Scott's final comments. And I think we had everything else corrected except for those items, which I just went over in terms of Scott's report. And I think we've answered all your questions. And anything else that we have that we weren't have to discuss?
Do you have any plans for putting any kind of a seed mix underneath the trees? What's going to be between the trees, because they're going to be small to start with?
Well, the whole area will be, that's part of the erosion control landscape plan. Anything that's disturbed will be reseeded.
With what?
In that area, it would probably be just a conservation mix, something that establishes growth. so that we don't have an erosion issue. I don't think there's any need for any special seed because it's not going to be a wetland environment.
So a maintenance plan for the basin, since this is going to be.
There is a
enormous?
maintenance plan included on our erosion control plan.
There is,
Yes.
okay. The wetland markers was the.
That was, but that was a comment that Ron said, I'm sorry, I've said that twice tonight, but that Scott will, I'm in the wrong town, so. That Scott said that we would decide at some point, we'll be happy to put whatever those markers are, but we did not show them because it was kind of left as an open question to be determined.
Yeah, I was kind of suggesting then as placing them at, along the limited disturbance line that he has, only about 8 to 10 feet up gradient of that. Because then they'd be in front of the, basically it's where the plantings are. But the markers would, if I go on about 10 feet in front of the LOD line, which is this line right here,
Right.
by going, about 10 feet in front of that, the markers, they'll be out in front of where, when they get a little bigger, you'll still be able to see the.
Right.
And we have no problems with that. And I think you had a spacing of 50 feet or something that you had in your comments every 50.
The what? Yeah, this
Yeah.
every 75 feet, it
75
changes
feet,
in the
yeah,
line.
yeah. And we have no problem complying with that.
And I suggested that as opposed to the top of the slope, because they will have to get down there seasonally to cut some stuff and to kind of keep it clean, because they got their septic system.
And it kind of reinforces the planted barrier to the signs, so they kind of go together.
Sounds good. And the only other thing was a maintenance plan for the trees, follow-up.
That's
Normally do it
something you
2
can
to
talk
3
about
year.
in deliberations.
Okay, all right, I didn't know. Okay.
I think it's
that was
more
all
of
I had
a
then.
surety that they start growing is what the,
Well, typically, the commission requires that there's either lately you've been doing the 3-year
yeah,
annual report for 3 years to make
Yeah.
sure that.
yeah. It's a guarantee that they're all growing is what it's meant for, yeah, that's not a problem.
I had a question. Looking at some of these slopes, is there, and I was looking at the erosion control plan, there's no proposal for any erosion control blankets?
They're all graded at 2 to 1, and really, if you look at it, yes, we have some extreme slopes, but for the final, the only watershed area that's going to contribute to those slopes is going to be the slopes themselves. So it isn't like we have significant upslope areas that are going to be a long-term contributor to that sloped area.
I guess the only, I am concerned with a pretty sizable space up front, and then you have another one that's east of the building, adjacent to the wetland. Just wondering if even silt fence or hay bale check dams along the slope, so that we're not getting, if we do have a storm event while you're trying to stabilize the soils, you're not getting rills turning into gullies on the slopes, and all that's left is a silt fence that could easily get blown out.
I wouldn't have a problem at the toe of the slopes. I think we could probably do, but
And
again.
not even up there, no, not up there,
Oh,
on the,
Oh, you're talking
yeah, I'm
about here?
talking on the east side, yeah, that's the east side.
These are all there, and they're all stone. These
That
are-
is.
That is, and
That's stone, and what about, so is that slope done? You're not doing anything there?
this slope will be there, and this slope here will be there. So I wouldn't have an objection to running a silt fence along the toe of the slope.
Yeah.
So that you have a protection in addition. I would have no problem with that. I obviously didn't include it because it's a relatively short distance from where, like, in this area where I have a double silt fence is only about 10 feet to the toe of that slope. So that's not an extension. And in this area, we're coming into the sediment or the water quality basin. So
Yeah, that's,
that's pretty well protected.
but you're pretty close to the wetland on this side. But where the,
This area
Is
right
that-
here?
no,
It's probably there.
center, yeah, right there in
But
that
the
area,
wetlands
you
is-
know, the wetlands.
Right at this point, yes, I agree. And we could do
And
something.
that's probably this, you know, the steepest
Yeah.
and,
But that's a relatively small area. And again, I have a double silt fence 10 feet away from the toe of the slope. So again, I would have no problem putting an additional silt fence along the toe of the slope. I mean, that would be, it's not a hard thing to do, and it would give it added protection. And
Yeah.
I can't disagree with you, you know.
Scott, did Mr. Edwards answer your question about stage storage calculation data?
Not
Before
yet, I
that?
mean, that could be something he can verify. He thought I was looking for, typically I look for that, for hydrologic purposes. But in this case, I was just trying to confirm his volume number that he had for water quality, volume.
And in my plan here, so.
Yeah, okay,
And-
so.
And I did
I
compute
mean,
that.
that's
for him.
something I can confirm afterward, and it could be contingent on, you know, confirming that that volume is there, that he says is there, that's all. So I'm not worried about it.
Mm.
Anything else from the commission? Anything else for the applicant before I open it up to public comment?
Nope, I'm done.
Okay, because this is a public hearing, I will open it up to public comment. Is there anybody here that would like to speak in support of this application? Anybody in opposition to this application? Any comments to be made of a general nature to this application? Hearing none, we will go ahead and close.
Or you want to see if he has any final
I'm sorry,
closing comments?
No. I
any
think-
closing remarks, sir?
No, sir, I'm all set.
Sorry. I'm supposed to ask you 4 more times. Is there anything else that you want to ask? Okay, so we'll officially close the application, the hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is enforcement. Notice of violation discussion, IWV 2018-01, 17 Enterprise Drive,
Yes.
J&S Industries LLC.
So we received a email from Attorney Dominic Thomas today stating that he would not be able to attend the meeting tonight. Anything that's,
Well, no, he had a
He
family
had a
emergency
family.
come up and issue come up, and so he couldn't make the meeting, and he requested that that be relayed to the commission.
So did he say he could come to the next meeting?
He didn't really say that in his email, but that's my
That's
understanding.
our
We've issued our notice of violation, all right?
We would have to,
Yes.
we would send him another letter.
So we'll send him another letter saying that he'll be back on the agenda for the next meeting, and,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Any other thoughts on the matter?
No, okay. So I guess we'll go ahead and do that. Do I need a motion, or are we just
I
gonna
don't think
discuss
so.
that?
no.
What's the date of our next meeting?
It is,
Is it the 11th?
yes, it is. April 11th.
Okey-dokey. Moving right along. We have no remediation submissions tonight. Moving right along to application hearing determinations. This is a section where we determine what kind of hearing our applications will be heard on. Up first is IWC 2014-07-A2, 50 Cambridge Drive, Axle Plastics. Oh, there's been 3 whole meetings without an application from Axle Plastics. This is an amendment to previous approval and review of a fenced-in outside storage area.
Okay, so you recall that they came before you with a proposal to put in the bin storage off the northeast corner of the building, and then that also included the tanks on the southwest corner of the building. We received the application for that at for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and noticed that there was an additional outside fenced-in storage area, changes to their parking lot, off the southeast corner of the building, adjacent to the detention basin. So we I notified the Planning and Zoning Department that that wasn't part of the application that came before you. I called the applicant and told them that they need to submit that to the commission. Incidentally, that outside storage area, which is fenced in, the fencing, it's there. They installed it already. The fencing this is in 8 parking spaces in their parking lot. They put in chain link fence with concrete footings, and there is pallets and containers and various things inside the storage area. And it's, as I said, it's there already. So I notified them that they need to submit an application. That's what this is. And let's read from the statistics here from the application. Bear with me. I guess this is an amendment application, so it doesn't really go into the details of how much wetlands and all that stuff. But you'll see that the storage area is clearly within a developed portion of their property.
All right, so shorthand version of this is they're asking for more storage space again. And again, they've already done it. And we're gonna go through another hearing regarding it.
Yeah,
For work that's already been done.
Right, this is another situation where work has already been done and they're coming to you after the fact.
Okay.
Their application for planning and zoning is on hold until this gets processed.
Okay. So someone other than me will have to make a motion, I guess, deciding whether this will be a regular hearing or a public hearing. But for the record, every hearing that we've had on 50 Cambridge Drive has been a public hearing.
Yeah, I might add that this last application that came before you, there was public comments from one of the abutters.
I'd say that, because of that, I would move for a public hearing because it's in the public interest.
I'll second.
Not necessarily that it's a significant impact activity, but that we know that there's public interest on the previous application.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Commissioner Shamas to move this to a public hearing, and a second by Commissioner Spence. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, IWC 2018-04-R, 8 Maple Drive, Rizzio. Site development and remediation to address unpermitted parking area and clearing within 150 feet of a river. 8 Maple.
Okay, so this is an application that comes to you in response to a notice of violation which was submitted. There was some site activity here. It really came about as part of an inspection on the abutting property. There was millings placed and grading, and the property was being utilized for some storage. And when we went out to inspect, we realized that it extended into this property. Once we started reviewing the file, we realized that it went a little bit further than that, but there was a an original approval. There were a number of approvals on this property that go back quite some time. And the latest one was an addition that had a paved parking area, and that, although they got their approval for that, they never met the conditions, but they built the addition and it's all there. The parking lot is not paved, so they never finished the site work. So this plan, after much of the property owner, this plan is really twofold in that it is a proposal for remediation to clean up some of the areas that have been impacted. Some of that has already occurred, some of the initial cleaning and removal of material. The rest of the remediation would be to take away the millings and restore the areas back to whatever would be acceptable to the commission. In doing so, they're also taking advantage of the expenses for putting together this application, and so they're also proposing some site improvements to expand, to finish the parking lot that they never did in the first place, and to expand the site to include additional parking. They're proposing to put in some detention and stormwater quality as part of that process. So I did not get a chance to, I started the review, but I didn't get a chance to finish it. But the application, there were some issues with the application that have to be cleared up. They need to properly fill out items 16 and 17, which list the projects, the size of the property, the acreage of wetlands, and the acreage of upland review areas, and how much is that's being disturbed. They have upland review area being disturbed. I believe that number, at least my first glance at it, is that's not an accurate number, so that's got to be revised. So I can't really give you the numbers in terms of the amounts of disturbances, but because those are items that they need to clarify and put out on their application. That's really all I have on it.
So are we supposed to do the same thing on this one?
Yep. We're here to decide if it's a public hearing or regular hearing, and I think we also, if there's something that we see that we don't, that we want, that's not there, we can say that now, right?
Yeah.
I think we need more details on the rain garden and the planting, because there's nothing for the plantings. There's a spec on the rain garden, but it just says to be planted, but
When you say more details on the rain garden, you mean planting details?
yeah.
So, I'll put plantings and buffer plantings too,
Yep.
along that side.
Mhm.
And that, I started the comments, and that's in my comments.
Okay.
They didn't provide a soils report. The soils, the wetland soils that are on the property are really respective to a short piece of remaining water course or ditch that runs through the front portion of the property. The wetlands that are in the vicinity of where they're gonna be doing the work are really off-site. So they're more apparent wetlands, and so they didn't provide that report, and also, any assessment or anything like that really is attributable more to the abutting property.
Well, there's two sections of water course. And, right, one coming off of Maple Drive, and then it's gonna go into a head wall and a 42-inch
Yeah,
corrugated metal pipe, and then head out.
Yeah, so that's already been done,
Right.
that's piped that for
Mhm.
several years.
I don't know, good with the regular meeting, but, defer to anybody else.
That's where I was leaning.
Me too.
Okay. I move that we bring this to a regular hearing.
Meeting, like agenda item? Not hearing, not public hearing, right?
No,
It's a regular-
we
Yeah, they,
define them as regular hearings and public hearing.
yeah,
It's kind of a
Jeff's right in that it
Yes.
technically is not a hearing, it's a,
Right.
it's a meeting.
Review.
It's a regular meeting, maybe we should change that verbiage, I guess.
maybe. We've done it the other way for so long.
Okay, so I have a motion, who made the motion? Commissioner Spence?
I
And a second by
Okay, anybody second.
Jeff? No? Somebody else?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Stewart. All those in favor of moving this to a regular meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
And that section is on our agenda for regular meetings.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just, we're using the other word.
Yes, we do.
Moving right along. IWC 2018-05-R, 4 Maple Drive. O'Keefe, removal of previously placed millings and proposed construction of an asphalt driveway with a grass swale and punch pool. Neighboring property to the one we just did, correct?
Yeah, so this is the one that really got it started, I did get a chance to do these comments, so hopefully you guys have that.
Mm-hmm.
The property is 2.72 acres. Wetlands on the property are 0.54 acres. Upland review area on the property is 1.68. The areas of regulated areas to be altered are 0 wetlands, but 0.63 acres of upland review area. You may recall, this one's a little confusing because this one has quite a history as well, and there's been several meetings, discussions, preliminary plans, et cetera. This actually they actually submitted a remediation, they provided a remediation submission to you was it 2 meetings ago, I guess?
No, it was on the
Last
last agenda,
meeting?
yeah.
Okay, so what happened was they submitted it as a remediation application, and when you saw it, it became obvious that it was more than just remediation. They were proposing a new driveway, so there was development being proposed, which changed the status of it to a regular application like the one we just did. So what they did was they submitted an additional or brand-new application for the development, and this also includes new development and site remediation. So it's twofold what the purpose of the application is for. In reviewing it, initially when you reviewed it, you looked at it and said that driveway that was being proposed wasn't gonna be compliant with planning and zoning requirements. They went back to the drawing board and came up with a plan to pave it. It includes some stormwater quality in the terms of a broad bioswale, and a few things like that. Well, I did the review, and I just had a number of issues with their, with the plan, and I've asked them to make some revisions. The stormwater quality control and the detention aspect of it had a number of issues, and my discussions with the engineer, he agreed that he would go back to the drawing board and redo it. So that portion of the application is gonna change. I gave you my comments only because I did them, but they'll probably change quite a bit. The driveway will still be there, but the stormwater quality works will be different. A little bit more straightforward and typical, and easier to maintain and easier to analyze and calculate. So they're going back to the drawing board, but they understand that by the time you have the hearing or the meeting, whatever you determine, that they'll be ready to move forward. If you have any questions. Sorry about that.
So the remediation part is mostly the removal of the millings and putting in plantings?
Mostly removal of the millings. You'll see in my comments that on this one, I also talk about, or suggest that you should consider buffer plantings and other stabilization plantings throughout the property to, in my opinion, they also need to have plantings and some type of barrier to discourage people from leaving the driveway and using that very tempting flat area that's gonna be left out there. Even though it's gonna be grass, it's gonna be very tempting.
It's like a split rail fence or something?
That's what I was suggesting, some split rail. They want to, supposedly, they want to develop this at some point with a small building. But they don't have the money at this point, and they don't want to proceed at this point. I was suggesting put a split rail fence there, because that's not real expensive, and you could pull it up and utilize it in the future in a different layout. So I'm waiting to see what the engineer comes up with.
It's almost as if it needs to be treated as two different applications, because the remediation timeline should be different from the development timeline.
Well, and the way we've been doing that recently is we've been doing it as one application, but when we write the letter will actually have two timelines. And if they don't move forward with doing the driveway immediately, then they will have to do the remediation portion, within your deadline, and then they would have the typical 5 years to do the other portion of it. So they would have a choice, but, when you get into the actual application and the presentation, you can talk about how you want that documented. But that's how we've been doing it. It's a little difficult to do that way, but the problem with a lot of these is that the applicants, the property owners don't want to do just remediation, because it's like, okay, do the remediation, and then a year later, rip it out because they're doing proposal.
Well, in this case, it is a separate entity because of where the remediation is taking place. It's not within the building proposal area.
Well, it's within the setback area, and that area where the remediation's taking place, they want to put a building there.
But that's not in this,
It's
that's
not
not
in
in this application.
That's correct. But they do want to put a paved driveway through that area, which is the development portion of the application.
That's true.
So the remediation is remove the millings, topsoil and seed, and I'm assuming put in plantings. The development portion of it is new driveway, fencing to keep people out of that area, and the biofiltration and detention that goes along with the impervious pavement. If they don't do the driveway, they don't need the water quality and the detention aspect of it.
What's the flavor?
So, you know, we're determining, again, whether this is a public hearing or a regular meeting. Many of the same arguments that, for the last application we did, on this application, it's my 2 cents, someone needs to make that motion, if that's what they said.
What was your 2 cents?
It was a second after they actually, yes.
Well, I'll move that we go to a regular meeting.
We have a motion to move this application to a regular meeting by Commissioner Stewart. Who had the second? I'm sorry. And second by Commissioner Ingles. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion passes
Is
unanimously.
there anything extra that you guys are looking for?
Well,
I
what we
haven't-
talked about, right?
Yeah, all
Just
right,
the
so
planting plan, whatever you need.
you kind of already looked at it when they came in with the remediation,
Mhm.
so. All right, will do.
All right. Moving on to other, Town of Monroe Public Works, IPU 2018-01.
Okay, so this is a request from the Public Works Department to renew their general permit. If you remember, we kind of created a program for Public Works so we could have some form of permitting what they are working on. And so what we came up with last time was a 5-year permit. It's a general permit that requires that the department notify you of any activity within regulated areas so that you are aware of what they're working on and that you can comment if need be on those activities. They try to do that ahead of time. There are some cases where they kind of have to go out and do it right away so that it gets reported a little bit after the fact. Hopefully, most of you are familiar with it, and there is an application, I believe you got them in your packet, by signed by the first selectman and the director of the director of public works.
And they're pretty good, they do what you say?
Yeah, I mean, initially, they were doing work without really doing a good job.
That's how we
on the
roll,
ENS
so.
control. And so we try to keep after them. I remind them every chance I get. The other problem we were having was they were digging a lot of ditches without properly putting in the side slopes. They were just like almost vertical ditches. They would just dig these ditches that would further erode. So trying to get a little bit more education going. Also, that goes along with this is there is a training program that is going to be enhanced a little bit as part of the MS4 program. So we're going to be kind of teaching them a little bit more about stormwater quality control and things like that. So the program with Public Works, because of MS4, will be slowly getting better, I hope, or at least there'll be more contact with them. They'll have more, they have certain requirements through the MS4 program as well. I'm sure Jim's aware of that as well. So.
So what are you looking for, a motion?
Yeah, you
We
need
scheduling a
to
meeting, or how is
approve
this?
this 5-year permit.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve, the 5-year permit for the highway department.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Stewart, second by Commissioner Spence to continue our permitting process with the town for another 5 years. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously.
I love when you get throw shit.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
throwaway pile.
Okay. Moving right along to deliberations on completed hearings and items completed from this agenda, of which we have 2. So we will begin with our first, 94 Elm Street, IWC 2017-13.
Move to approve the conditions. Oh, we can't do that. We're
We're gonna
gonna
write up
put a
conditions,
letter
right?
together, right?
Yes, so we will discuss,
Haven't seen that far.
I'm assuming that we're leaning towards sending a approval letter. We will vote on that in the next meeting, if it is the case. What conditions do we have in mind?
You addressed most of the things that I had written on my list last week. The only 2 that I still had that was open, we need to talk about what we want them to do about the invasives and the remediation timeline. So,
Don't we have a standard for both of those?
well, we talked about the fact that there were some invasives and the soil scientist said he didn't feel it would change much when it came to water quality. I think that's what he said.
He said that around the ponds, it was sparsely vegetated with invasives, and that there was a clump closer to the Farm Mill River of invasives that I guess were more prominent on the site. I mean, they're not proposing to do any work beyond the fence line, so I don't know. I'm of the mind, like, what, not to have them go and touch anything unless it's identified and cut, removed. But I don't know what the benefit's going to be there if it's sparsely.
Well, sparsely now, that's the problem.
If the majority is dominated with native species, and, they're healthy,
I didn't walk out that far.
I don't know. I mean, I don't see that invasives are gonna take over if there's a healthy population of the native species around the pond, and they're not disturbing anything down there, so
Right.
there's no,
Also, it looked like most of that area was on another property.
Yeah, that's what I was.
So they're gonna be able to
Yeah.
hit the part of
Yeah.
it, but if
Yeah.
it's
That's true.
right there,
Yeah,
it's just gonna
that's-
fill
right
right
over
back in.
and if they're not
That
careful.
property's for sale, and we've been getting calls on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I don't know what people are thinking. I think it's big enough to subdivide. So it might be coming in as part of a development where they'd be addressing that, I would guess, at that point, but I'm not sure.
Well, I am inclined to agree with Jeff.
You don't have to.
That's all right, you're our expert, so.
Yeah, I'm inclined to.
I'm inclined so. Okay,
I mean,
are
I
there-
Think
personally-
not to agree with
I
Jeff.
personally am scared to death of Japanese knotweed, but I mean, the others are invasive too, but the knotweed seems to be so pervasive.
Mhm.
But I don't remember where that was, and like you said, they're not working in that area, so it's kind of,
He showed the picture way up in the left-hand corner, right along the river, so it's like, I'm like, how are they gonna really get way back there anyway without messing something else up, so.
so we'll just let it go. We didn't really have a remediation timeline, because this wasn't really remediation, so never mind on that one. So my only other comment was to remove the shed. The gazebo could stay,
Mhm.
the dock could stay, dock, whatever you want to call that,
Mhm.
could stay. We didn't talk about the electricity that was running along the fences.
They said they already
They
disconnected
said they
it.
disconnected, but are they gonna remove it?
Well, if they're taking the fences off, then it's gonna be gone.
Except for they're not taking the fences off along the sides of the
Only
property,
cut-
only
the one that cut
across
across.
one.
Oh.
I think you should ask them to remove it.
Remove all
I was
electricity?
asking to have it removed. I mean, it's disconnected, it's sitting there, it's like, what if it isn't disconnected, or what if
Right.
someone
Yeah.
reconnects
Well,
it?
especially if one of the lungs runs along the top of the fence.
Or what if a kid
Maybe-
plays with it
Yeah.
and
That's what I'm saying.
electrocutes himself
Yeah.
because he's playing
Oh,
with
we
it?
thought it was disconnected.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If they remove it, it's.
especially near the water, like in case he goes in.
The
you know.
turtle electrocutes himself.
Yeah.
Thought we wanted electric fences between the wetlands and
Yeah, so people.
thought that was
Yeah,
what we
it's a
were
marker.
striving for.
These are
Marco,
right
when
about
you
it
have live
neck level,
wires.
so
Right, yeah.
Okay, so that's a
That's
decent
all I
condition.
had on my list.
Anybody else have anything else?
Let's, maybe
So
Scott
I'm gonna
does.
run through what I have, so I've got.
Yes, please.
Provide life certification on final submissions. There was a comment about that this whole thing about where the markers are going, you guys came to the conclusion that the markers stay where they were,
Right.
and that they'll put a note on the plan. Let's see, markers. Okay, and then we've got limits of development, all right, number 3 can really go because it's handled in the one before that. And then the wetland markers, so we already talked about, and I believe that was it. I've got provide legend for soil type numbering, shed to be removed, remove electric services, and the markers to stay, and add the note. And your reasons?
Oh, what a reason list. The applicant has provided substantial evidence that the proposal represents no adverse impact to the wetlands or water courses. That's number 1. And no adverse impact doesn't get any better than that. I guess we could add number 3.
Yeah, there was no alternatives, right?
Didn't need to be,
So 1 and
because
3?
there's no impact. Yep, 1 and 3. It's our normal.
Anybody else have
Okay.
anything?
So we'll put together a draft for you and have it at the next meeting.
Okay. I'm gonna take a 2-minute recess. Commissioner Chavez had to step out for a brief minute, so if anybody wants to do that before we hit the next deliberation, we can certainly do that. If that's okay with everybody. Okay, thank you. All right, we are back to complete our deliberations on hearings completed in this meeting. IWC 2018-01-R, 98 Enterprise Drive. And I guess we are here to figure out how would we like to direct staff. at this point.
I move that we send a
No.
letter of approval.
We don't do that. Right, we just discussed conditions, right?
You're right, we discussed conditions. But we're leaning toward approval.
I think we're all in agreement that we will like the staff to compose a letter of approval with conditions, and I'll hear anybody's thoughts on those conditions.
Do mine first, and then you can
Sure.
add to it.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Mhm.
All right, so, let's see, administrator. Okay, so we already addressed technical. That the block storage bins along the eastern side of the site be marked in red so that that's understandable on the plans. The URA line in the final set needs to be red, very minor issue. That the drainage calculations be submitted, the revised drainage calculations. As I said, he made changes on the plan, showed the new elevations, but I have to have the final report to make sure that whatever he did on the plan is properly reflected on in the report, and that it works, that it does what he says. It'll be contingent on that. If he can't do that, that would be a reason for him to come back to the commission. So those items stay on, especially C about the 18-inch pipe and the headwater and all that stuff. And the both bullets on item C would stay and needs to be reflected in the stormwater management calculations. Item M, the trees and stumps in the tree trunks and the stumps in the area near the proposed septic system should be indicated on the plan. That should stay. For whatever reason, he never showed that, and it really should be documented. That the stage storage calculation data be provided to verify the volume in the stormwater quality volume that he's provided, and that he verify that. Item 10, the wetlands markers be located 75-foot intervals or change of alignment along the LOD line about 8 to 10 feet. Let's make it 10 feet, parallel to but just upgrading of the LOD line, if you're all okay with that. Details, the width of the 4-bay berm should be indicated in the corrected spelling on the detail. The commission needs to establish a timeline for the remediation work. Really, this one, the remediation in this is really, they started their previous approval. They built the wall, they put in the slope, they never did the detention basin, they started utilizing the property. The violation was really the utilization of the property without proper authorization, because they weren't using it for what they had the approval for, and they weren't finishing their approval. As far as remediation work, I think maybe to break that out, we would say that the remediation work would be everything below the wall, on the slope going down toward the wetlands, finishing the detention basin work, finishing the slope, getting those plantings in and stabilizing. I think if you were to, and getting rid of the stumps and the tree trunks, if you were to indicate that that needed to be done in a shorter period of time, that probably would be good. And then for the rest of it, they'd have more time. Although I'm thinking this through, they've
got a
already
septic system
disturbed
that's
and they've
gonna go
already
in there.
started, so they shouldn't
Yeah.
get the 5 years. You should be giving them a timeline really to do the work. Certainly to do everything below the wall, everything above the wall, they need to either stabilize within a certain period of time, or they need to build the building.
You keep saying the wall, but there's a wall that flanks the wetlands too, so you're talking about a
I'm talking
different
about
wall.
the top of the slope, there's a block
Top
wall.
of slope.
So
So everything between the top of slope and the
wetlands.
wetlands.
That clearly needs to be done in the timeline, that everything above that slope needs to be stabilized. If they're not moving forward with the building, they need to stabilize that whole upper area within X number of months. Just tell me what that is and I'll write it up that way.
I mean, stabilize, say within 30 days, they should be stabilizing.
Yeah, they're not gonna be able to stabilize it in 30 days. Have you seen it?
No.
It's
It's
pretty big, yeah.
a mess.
Mhm.
I mean, it's got big piles of millings, and they've got a machine
So what-
there processing material. And,
Okay.
I mean, I think 30 days is too short. They would need more, especially, they can't do it in 30 days either because of the weather. So I think by June 1st, it would be reasonable, or the end of June.
Wait a minute, you're talking about removing piles, now that's not within the remediation area.
It's not within the remediation area, but it's all uphill. It's it's all uphill of the upland review area. It's just, if it's not removed, it's coming down the hill into your wetlands.
Did they have soil erosion controls on?
Yeah. It's actually, the slope and the grass on the bottom is fine. I mean, there's nothing going beyond that. It's just that that's typically the way I would write it up. It's kind of confusing, but I'm wrestling with these because they're hard to do in terms of development versus remediation, you know. It's a draft, so I'll give it my best shot and.
Well, I mean, we could dictate that it's gonna be phased and all the remediation work has to be done by X date, and then the development can continue, or.
Yeah, well, that's the way.
On
That's what he's
some,
asking for.
But if
Yeah.
it makes sense to do the development at the same time because of whatever reason on some of these projects,
But
then.
you can't force them to do that. So.
No,
Kind
but
of
you give them the
remediation.
option if
You
they.
give them the option.
you give 'em
That's
the
the way
option.
I've been writing these up, so that, in other words, you don't wanna give them 5 years
Right.
to button up the area within the upland review area. So you say to them, look, you've got to do this. If you're not gonna build the building right away, you have to do this.
Mhm.
You have to stabilize the slope, put the plantings in, at least finish the detention basin so that that activity down there is done. And then the upper part of it, you have to stabilize that. Put some topsoil, seed it,
Mhm.
and make it so it doesn't erode.
Mhm.
Then you have 5 years to decide if you're doing the building.
Mhm.
And they could go 3 years before they decide they have a tenant and they wanna do the building. Or if they move forward right away with the building, then we just handle it that way.
But the lower part of the wall should still, except for the area where they're gonna put the septic system in, the lower part needs to still be stabilized.
Yes. And so I've written up a couple like this. I think the one next door, 124. So I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but I'll pull that out
Okay.
and use that same word.
Okay.
So when you get the draft, kind of focus on that, look at that, what I did with that.
One additional comment I had was about the additional silk fence at the toe slope.
Right.
Doesn't have to be silk fence, it could be hay bales, but,
Yeah, actually,
Some
I
type of
didn't
erosion
finish
control
yet.
measure.
So,
oh, you're still working on yours.
yeah, so the date for.
Chapter 10?
The date then, what do you want the date for the remediation?
June 1st is acceptable. I don't know.
For which?
It's a little
For
soon.
which?
A little soon?
July
Yeah, I
1st.
mean,
90 days?
everyone keeps coming back.
Yeah.
They don't get it done.
Let's
Yeah.
do July 1st.
Okay.
Yeah, that's 90 days, right? Yeah.
Okay, so then the next one I got, the follow-up monitoring, you want 3-year?
Yeah.
Okay, change outlet to, they have to reflect that they changed the outlet to 24-inch and in the plan and the report. And then I have provide additional silt fencing along toe of slope at rear of property and at toe of slope above the water quality basin.
And we were talking about
Okay.
conservation mix under the trees as often.
Conservation mix, what?
Under the trees, around the trees.
Oh,
that are-
around the plantings.
plantings. Rather than just plain old trees.
All right, and then I've got reasons, question mark.
1 and 3.
Wow, that was quick.
You ready for
All
it?
right, now, anybody want to add anything?
Got everything I had. You
All
got
right.
the, you got the wetland markers, right? That's the only other thing I had.
Yeah, I got that on there.
10 feet from the plantings.
Right.
That's what we discussed in the staggered plantings, but that was on the plans this time.
All right, so we'll do that draft for you, and then you can
Excellent.
vote at the next meeting.
So there was no votes on that, it was just a request.
We vote on the draft.
All right. Our next section is bond releases, reductions, and reports. There are none. Time extensions, 2 Victoria Drive, Kimball. I-13-01, file number 770. And it's a request for time extension.
So, some of you old timers may remember this approval.
Old timers.
Let me check my calendar.
Lois, were you and I the only ones on there?
What happened with this one is there was a remediation approval, and it was before we really were processing them the way we do now, and you were processing them as if they were development approvals, and you gave them
Yeah.
5 years. He went in and I don't know if you remember this, but there was an old Quonset hut for equipment.
Oh, yeah.
There was like it was an old campground area.
Yep.
And he removed a lot of debris on the property, some piles and equipment and debris, and he removed a concrete slab foundation that was kind of in the wetland area. He did that work. He took it out, removed that, kind of stabilized it a bit, but never did the plantings. So 5 years went by, and now he needs an extension. I'm suggesting that you grant the extension, but we move things to the current way of doing it and saying, yes, but you have a deadline of such and such to get those plantings done.
This is the abutter to
What
4
this-
and 8 Maple, right?
That is,
But
yes.
you know what, this decision has to do with 4 and 8 also. Now, do we need to do something to remove those two from 2 Victoria Drive? Because right now they're lumped together in the same decision.
They both have easement over this. It was for the paved driveway that was put in.
Yeah.
And they both have easements over that paved driveway. Matter of fact, the driveway that 4 is proposing is to go out onto this paved
Oh,
driveway
okay,
to
okay, so
Victoria,
it's
so
okay
they
that
can
they
use the
need
light
that.
to get out of there.
All right. Well, we're only talking plantings, right?
Only talking plantings.
90 days?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
July 1st?
Yep.
Do I need a motion?
Yes. We
I
do move.
move that we extend it for 90 days,
A motion by Commissioner Spence, do I hear a second?
Second.
July 1st.
Who was the
Till
second?
July 1st. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
I'm
Any
sorry, you said
abstentions?
90 days?
I said July 1st.
Motion passes unanimously.
July, yeah.
IWC 2017-8, 124 Enterprise Drive, 60-day time extension request to complete conditions of approval. Have they had time extensions?
This is the first one.
Oh,
Yeah, it's gotta be the first one.
that property.
Yeah.
It was approved September 27th.
This is just to finalize the plans?
Yeah.
I move that we authorize this 60-day extension.
Move my Commissioner Stewart to authorize, to extend a 60-day time extension request, oh, whatever. You know,
Second.
you guys all know what I'm saying.
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Shamus. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion passes unanimously. On to enforcement.
Oh my God, who made it?
Who
Who
made
made
that?
those motions?
Commissioner Stewart, second by Commissioner Shamus. Agreed upon by all. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a whole section. Inland Wetland Commission,
We are actually already,
Yeah, we
We did.
jumped ahead before, so.
okay,
There were no agent approvals or permitted uses as of right, so. nothing
Okay.
to report.
so on to enforcement, deliberations on completed remediation submissions, there's none, right?
correct.
Administrative review of enforcement issues,
Yeah, and Denise being new, we just haven't been up, we're actually working on a couple of other ones that were involved with the town attorney, et cetera, so.
I know she's new, she had an opportunity to look over our old spreadsheet, or are we abandoning that?
No, we saw the spreadsheet, she's looking over that, she's moving forward. I think things should be good because there's a lot of things that we don't have to explain to her.
Right.
So, I think, it's just a matter of her getting familiar and, there's a lot of work.
Understand. Thank you. Okay, general discussion other, I 0706 154 Enterprise Drive, site changes.
Okay, so, this one is, I wanted to bring this before you because they've come in for some site changes. I thought we could handle this, I thought I could handle this administratively, and that it did not need a amendment application on their part. They are going to the Planning and Zoning Commission for it, because it's a little different for them. There's some issues with changes that they really need to be approving at the commission level. But basically, what they're proposing, I don't know if you remember this, but it's the old Nagy property. There's two lots, this lot and this 164. This is under construction, it's far along at this point, but they are making some changes in the back with this area back here. And that is basically, whoops. Oh, I keep doing it, I'm sorry.
This is the one where we had that long discussion about brining, right? Brine tanks
Yes.
and salt.
So basically what's happening back here is
First ones.
they're changing the angle. They had these on a funny angle here to make use of it, but because they have enough room between this parking and this, they want to just straighten it out. So it's the same building,
Did we have this discussion during their hearings, that why isn't it straight? I think that we did.
Yeah, you could have, yeah.
We did.
Yeah, well, and they're adding, the only thing for you is they're adding this light, and I've got with the P and Z application, I got the photometric plan, and I just made sure that the light doesn't spill into the wetlands. By the time you get halfway down this slope, it's at 0. So I'm checking on that. These two lights, they moved over, these lights on the front, and they just straightened this out. Other changes they're making to the site, which really don't affect you because they're outside the upland review areas, they're putting a holding tank under the ground here because they're gonna wash some stuff inside the building. They're putting a generator over here. We changed some of the drainage, it's a long story, but because of the ledge and everything, they now have a leak off with a swale that comes around to an inlet here, but the rest of the drainage is the same by the time it gets to the wetlands. So I just wanted to, boy, I'm in trouble tonight. I wanted to just kind of tell you about it so that I can report to the Planning and Zoning Commission that you are aware of the changes and that you guys are okay with it. The other thing is, they just straightened out this secondary containment around the brine tanks as well. And I think they shifted it over so it's literally right on the property, on the setback line now.
We had a long discussion on this, about this not being straight, and we also had a long discussion about what was stopping the water coming down and washing out into that sand and salt bin, right?
We did have a lot of discussion
And it
about
was a
that.
Well, this
Storage
plan
was
doesn't
middle
show
parking
it,
lot, wasn't there?
but it's graded away from the sand and salt, so the water comes down, it's graded into this area. Doesn't show it on this, because it's just a layout,
Right.
but that's what's happening with that. So when it rains, water comes away from, and so, I don't know whether it was inland wetlands or P and Z, but one of the commissions was concerned about wind and rain, that, the wind would blow.
That was me.
Okay, and so what they're doing is they're
Right.
putting in
I'm
those
not crazy, right?
flexible wall system, the door wall system,
Okay, good.
that will come down over it and will keep the rain out. So
Didn't
that's,
they propose that?
yeah,
Didn't that po- Oh,
yeah.
okay, so they did that.
Remember
Yeah,
that? Now
yeah,
I
so I do
remember. They did it right
yeah.
at the meeting and they
Yeah,
gave me
oh,
the,
yeah.
yeah. So they have that information and that's what the change was.
Okay.
You guys all okay with that?
They're not changing any structures, they're just straightening it. They're not changing the construction or the gaps or anything like that. That's gonna throw some of the sand and salt over back down, right?
I believe that, I don't think so. I thought there might be something where there was part of this area also had a roof on it, but it wasn't anything you guys required. And I think that they're making that more uniform. But that's for clean fill and clean materials, it's all there. The sand and the salt, you wanted a roof over.
All right, fantastic.
Okay?
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, I would now take this time to hear from our Regulation Amendment Committee and all the work they've done.
Well, I keep compiling ideas. I've got a whole stack of ideas.
Excellent.
And so it's just a matter of getting us together. Actually, Jeff and I could probably just talk about it for a while and then bring you in when we've gotten some concrete
Yep,
ideas.
and I wanted you to get the conservation people involved too.
You know,
That was a-
regulations?
No, that was,
Oh, you're
that's the
talking about
next
the
thing.
I'm sorry.
Stop jumping the gun.
Sorry.
What about, what happened to 139?
So, Lois, I think that's a good idea.
That's,
Oh, I
that's
forgot.
after.
If the
Yeah,
two of
she
you
said you had one.
can do
Yeah.
that, and then you can bring
Okay.
me in after the
Because
fact.
Jeff and I are probably
I
more
know,
available.
you just don't want a long-winded meeting.
Well, no, I would never say that.
Streamline. Okay, I was just
We're gonna
reminded
put Friedel next
that
to
we had an add-on in this section, right? Hattertown?
Hattertown Road modification to
Oh.
plan.
Yes,
It's on there.
I
Close
forget,
this up.
oh, okay, I forget his name.
Of course it is,
Mr.
Donna.
Krisak.
Mr. Krisak,
Did we do the bond release?
There you go,
There was
Hattertown.
none.
which one is it, you know?
The one that's stated on top,
This
garden fence, yeah?
Mm-hmm. This must have been old one. Yes, it was.
Never mind.
Yes. Okay, so, he came in, I guess he's in the process, this is the remediation plan, if you recall, where he had put the fill in the upland
Oh,
review
God.
area, and, because he wanted to have a garden, and then you made him take the fill out, and he put some bushes in, then he put
He
these
did a nice job.
markers in, did a good job. And he's at the point now where he's putting in the garden.
Oh, this is new?
So he wants to put the garden, you know, he just wanted to clear that the garden is gonna be, you know, here's the markers that he put in. This is his maintainable yard, he's gonna be within the yard, excuse me. And he's gonna put in a fence in this area here, roughly 30 by 50. And he's going to put raised beds within that fenced-in area, which will be within his yard and outside of the area that you want left to be returned to natural.
The garden was the whole thing that started the violation, was that he was going to.
And he was a little bit concerned that he wouldn't be able to do this, and I said, look, I'll make what I did was, I made this note, and I'm gonna make a note of this on his agent approval. He used an agent approval back then to get,
Which guy is this?
Mr. Krisak?
Oh, yeah, I think, isn't he the guy that
Oh,
was
let him
very,
do
very
his
upset
garden.
the first time he came in?
Yeah, so he's very anxious to get his garden, so
Yes,
I
yes,
said I'd
yes.
bring it to you and make sure that you guys all agree
That
that that's
was okay.
acceptable.
I think it
So
was
he
fine.
didn't have to come back?
No, he looks, it looks.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't think he had to come to,
I think
139 Hannah.
that was mean to him.
I don't think I was here for that.
Oh, he's a sweet man.
So that's the ticket? I can-
Yes.
I can destroy wetlands if I cry?
So that's
Okay.
good. Good.
Okay, Public Outreach Committee?
I'm gonna cry.
There's
I
a new
went
display
to
board
the-
out in the.
Oh, there's a new display board outside. I went to the talk that was given by the Conservation Commission / Land Trust /
Yeah,
Wetlands.
how was that?
It was interesting. It was only an hour and a half long, and she covered a lot of ground, but she basically gave a lot of information as to where you can pursue to find out more information, because throwing it at people, they just throw it away anyway. So, it was attended by about 20 people, I think, 25 people, something like that. And there wasn't much wetlands in it, but it was a smattering of a little bit of everything. I mean, it had four basic
I already sent the information to our consultant, and he's gonna include it in our report, our 2018
Okay.
report.
Okay.
And so what I wanted was, and Don, are you still putting that together, a meeting with the conservation? And I want that to happen sooner than later. Conservation.
She's been working on
Commission, you
it,
guys.
so she's been CCing me on
But
it.
I'll tell you, Donna put together the MS4 display out here. I don't know if you
That looks
noticed
like
it.
high school.
Are you describing what MS4
I'll have to
is?
look at.
What?
Is anywhere written what
Yes.
MS4 is?
Yeah.
Okay, because that sounds so technical. And
Yeah,
nobody's gonna know what the
yeah.
heck it is.
Well, it actually, the title of the display out there says stormwater
Prevention.
prevention,
Oh, okay.
stormwater
I
quality,
was gonna
whatever.
say, you can't
It
prevent.
says
All right,
stormwater
let's focus here.
Prevent stormwater pollution.
Prevent stormwater
Oh, yeah, we
pollution.
got
So, just real quick to finish that is, I think it was the two of you.
Yes.
To meet with them,
Barbara and-
they are very interested in doing a lot of the volunteer work for, you guys come up with the ideas, they'll volunteer to.
Is she,
the-
Barbara's a little dynamo.
And
She's
the other
amazing.
thing is, we are also in the process of, I want to get another display board for wetlands. So you would have one, MS4 has one, and so you would take that display, between the two display boards, maybe we can get some information going, and then that can be taken to when you go to these things, or when they go to these things. Really, you know, seriously, this is an important part of what the commission is, you know, public outreach.
Right.
So whatever, I appreciate what everybody's.
Okay, thank you.
Just looking back before we move on, did we address Aquarian's letter in 94 Elm?
We didn't read the
We read the, oh my God.
exhibits.
We do that when we vote it, right?
Yeah,
Close it.
well,
Can't do it now.
I'll find out about it. I don't think that's a major issue. I mean, the exhibits are the exhibits, you just.
Yeah, they were already
you just
submitted.
Read them all.
They're part of the record, right?
Yeah.
They're part of the record, so.
I love this drawing though, the guy from Aquarian, his drawing at the back of it. It's so like,
You must have somebody.
use the
draw it.
crayon or something.
We
It's
did,
so
yes.
big. It's like-
There's a new director for.
I'll ask about that, but at this point, so between the two of you, if you could.
They're basically, they're doing their, Aquarian is doing this, like, we don't want anything to do with this, see you later.
Happens.
Cause they're like, it's such an old, like.
All right, strike that from the record. Correspondence,
None.
treasurer's report?
Everything's good.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Listen to the treasurer moving on.
I have a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Stewart. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Spence. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Meeting is adjourned.